Hi, this is Kai. I think this is going to be the last video lecture for the class. I might have one more during finals week, just as kind of a wrap up and a thank you. But I want to address a couple cleanup areas today. But I want to begin by framing an invitation for you to view this entire topic of startups and innovation as a interesting field of academic work, of community work, of personal work that explores the boundary between exploitation and exploration. What do I mean? Most of our work in business, to start off with, really seeks to try and exploit our knowledge of markets, our products, competitive advantage, intellectual property, so on, in order to try and maximize profits. And we do that in order to maximize the value exchange, of course, but we're also trying to maximize the return on some investment that was made, whether that was time, energy, or money, or a combination of all that, as well as to generate sufficient profits to be able to fund ongoing operations, additional quality improvement, perhaps new investments. And, while maybe our business makes enough money that we, as a business founder or our business, starts coming full circle in this process and becomes the strategic investor in some new startup, offers a competition, a challenge, offers a startup an opportunity to solve a problem for us, or we as founders move on and begin taking some of the profits and investing ourselves as angel investors. Something I found myself very rewarding to be able to come full circle in that area. So that exploitation is a necessary part of our capitalistic model, and to the degree that it's done with a full appreciation of the externalities of what we're doing, that is to say that we're not cheating, we're not avoiding costs like carbon costs and whatnot, but that we're truly deriving the maximum value we can for what we've done, and that we have then reinvested it. That exploitation is a good part of our business. And the other aspect is the exploration and the ability to seek out lots of bad ideas in order to find the few that actually work, the ability to experiment repeatedly and try out hypotheses and seek to build, measure, and learn in order to discover some new unseen business model, and to align it with the time and the opportunity through strategy and planning to make an investable opportunity and turn it into a venture. So we balance this exploitation versus exploration activity when we talk about innovation and entrepreneurship. And it's not an easy balance, but I think it is one to always hold fairly close to the top of your consciousness in terms of the work that you're doing, because you can't do just one without the other long term to be sustainable in what you're doing. And indeed, most ongoing operations ventures really need to focus a lot of their effort on maximizing the value they're creating to return the original investment in order to be able to move on and potentially be involved in exploration in the future. So it's this balance that we have to do. It's a balance that I think is necessary and valuable. And what we've been exploring in this class are largely some of the tools of exploration, but in that last bit of work regarding the innovation to launch model, where I suggested that all the tools and the thinking and the methods of the innovation to launch model actually become the same tools that morph into what we use in ongoing operations and continuous quality improvement and the iterations that we go through in our business. So let me touch on a few other almost random thoughts tied to this. First off is I haven't spent a lot of time in this class on the business formation mechanics. I got a couple comments from students saying, gosh, we haven't spent much time on how do you actually start the business. And it's a lot of information on the state's website about creating LLCs and C Corps and partnerships and the mechanics there. What I will tell you is that it is a bit of a transactional labyrinth to move through, and that there are folks out there that are pretty good at it. I really enjoy working with the Small Business Development Center and their advisors. They're free, and they really have the skills to be able to provide contemporary, current information on the process of being able to navigate that activity. What I will suggest is a subtlety for you to at least be aware of in regards to the business formation issue and with it the investment opportunity. And that is that the easy way to start a business is to form a simple, quick LLC and to do a very modest amount of paperwork that creates an entity with the state. And once that entity is created, if you have employees, you can then go over to Department of Labor and create your employment, the employer record. And you can pretty quickly kind of get the wheels turning with the help of an accountant that understands payroll and start understanding the steps required for ongoing reporting that's required in that. The issue here, though, is a really deep one that would take far more time than we have here, is understanding the difference between formation of that simple LLC versus the C Corp and the extra time and effort and money that going down that route costs you. But what I want you to be aware of is that from an investor standpoint, there's two significant values in trying to get to the C Corp model as soon as you can. The first is there's a number of tax benefits to investors that don't kick in until a company is a C Corp. And those play off of the idea that a C Corp is a taxable entity. And so there are incentives to be able to encourage the formation of those taxable entities, whereas an LLC is a pass-through entity. And the tax obligation goes to the individuals. And so the entity itself doesn't have much in the way of tax burden because they're all passed through. And as a result, there aren't much tax benefits to investors. Investors have the opportunity through C Corps to be able to get extra benefits in terms of writing off their losses, as well as getting extra benefits in terms of rolling over their gains. So just be aware that the issue of LLC versus C Corp is not simple in terms of the investment side of things. The other thing that to me is really profound is that people choose LLCs pretty typically, in my opinion, because it's simple, but it also avoids the issue of control and having to have a board of directors. And my view is that that is unfortunate because I think it allows somebody to feel like they can put off that issue of shared governance. And I think that's a mistake. I think startup companies need to have a board of advisors, a board of directors as soon as possible, and not waiting until you think you're ready. Because it is through that oversight that you have assistance, coaching, mentoring, but also a sounding board for the decisions that you make. And they bring you back to that discussion and ongoing challenge of exploitation versus exploration, and how do you manage that process as your business develops. I've also not spent a lot of time on an important but subtle distinction between Main Street businesses or lifestyle businesses and scalable startup businesses. And I want to acknowledge that the majority of new ventures are just typical kind of Main Street businesses. They're the underlying engine of our economy. They're an apparel shop, a shoe repair shop, a restaurant, a retail store, grocery store, a local corner, gas station, a local one. And these rooms, really are the engine of much of our economy. But if you recall in the innovation to launch model, I parsed out the idea of new products and services going to new markets as kind of this more extreme, more risky type of innovation versus the development within the boundaries of existing markets and existing products as kind of existing business models, lower risk. And as a result, the issues around business formation of those existing business models really was really more a issue of business plan, a little bit of local demographics, raising some money, even going to the bank, they're more bankable, and launching that. And so I have really been biased on kind of that lower right quadrant of that matrix, that is newer products, newer markets, the challenges in there. And part of that is because of my interest in economic development. And the reality is, as valuable as Main Street businesses are to the core of our economy, it is the scalable startup that is the actual significant job creator in our country. In Alaska, 90% of the jobs created in the last 10 years have come about from scalable new startups that are less than 5 years old. And across the country, that's the case. These really are the engine of jobs, um, if not also a contributor to the local economy that's going on there. So there is this bias towards scalable startups. It's also the scalable startups, or quite frankly, the investable startups. Main Street startups, again, being valuable, are really not investable in terms of outside investment. There's not enough return on them. And in fact, there shouldn't be. The kind of returns that investors need for the risk that they take, if you applied that to all your Main Street businesses, you'd never be competitive. You have such an high overhead obligation to your investors that you'd be funneling out the money that's needed to really exploit that local Main Street opportunity. But I do think Main Street is important, it's vital. And I would just offer that there's a lot of new interest in kind of a middle space of Main Street investing with businesses that are perhaps not as scalable, but are still quite profitable. And there's this idea around Main Street investing. Sometimes it's referred to as revenue redemption investing. And it seeks to provide some working capital for these more local mainstream businesses, but without the high overhead. And so the returns on investment are more in the order of 2 or 3x as opposed to 20 or 30x, which makes the cost of capital, while still far more expensive than just a bank, if you can just put up a house or your 401k, it does put it within reach for some of these local Main Street type businesses that aren't as large and scalable and potentially profitable as other ones in there. I want to touch a little bit on some of the resources required. They're really hard to find in Alaska right now. I would invite you, if you're looking for some of them, to go to the kaiholland.com website. You'll see I have a page there for startup resources. And in those resources, you'll find in the list there a lot of different options, and they're kind of segregated by the innovation launch model. So innovation modeling, strategy, so on, are all there for resources. I do think the 1 Million Cups event that happens every Wednesday is probably one of our most valuable resources, if you will, because it's really the best place we have for networking and sharing and connecting people. The Small Business Development Center is also a valuable part of that resource that can help you connect up with what you need at the time in there. I think I want to wrap this up for now, and each one of these topics could go off in a lot of different directions. What I want to do is come back to my opening thought on exploitation versus exploration. And I want to suggest to you something that came about in a conversation recently with Andy Stahl, one of the executives for the Kauffman Foundation, that actually has been up here in Alaska doing Startup Weekend, and I've enjoyed working with him. He came out of Cedar Rapids, and the innovation ecosystem that developed there in response to a large flood about 10 years ago that was a major disruption, and through that disruption was the opportunity for revitalization. He refers to entrepreneurship as a Trojan horse. And in saying that, what he's explaining is something that many of us that do this work really hope comes out of what we're doing. And that is that while we talk a lot about new ventures and startups and innovation, entrepreneurship, what we're really teaching in these programs and in the work we do is we're teaching people how to become empowered to create the future that they want. Um, Another discussion with a guy down at UCSD a couple days ago. He said, you know, we really have found out that we don't incubate businesses, we incubate people. And both of these folks are basically relating the idea that it is through the tools and methods of innovation and entrepreneurship that we're really teaching people how to develop the skills and the processes and the methods to be able to see the opportunity in front of them and to be able to seize that opportunity. And whether that is in creating a new venture, whether that's solving a community problem, whether that's taking action within a family, whether that's personal growth and pursuit of a new career, that empowerment of individuals and the tools by which to seek out something that does not exist and to be able to create it is truly the engine of what we do. If a new company comes out of that effort, that's fine. If perhaps a new product in an existing company comes out of that effort, that's fine. If a problem with a customer is solved because of a continuous improvement project, that's fine. But what's really better is knowing that we have created a path for individuals to be empowered over their lives and their future, and to be able to use these methods. And I would say most of all, just an opportunity mindset, that you can look at where things are at and you can imagine different scenarios by which they could be different and better, that you have the tools to be able to explore those options, to do the discovery work, to do the validation work, to create the models, to test them, as well as to reach out and integrate other resources to be able to help you create new opportunity. And those opportunities are investable. And in many cases, that investability doesn't mean money. It means they're investable in the sense that people will contribute their time and their money to those efforts because of the value that they see in the outcome. And the same for yourselves, that you find things that are investable in terms of your lives and how you pursue the opportunities and the good that you can do in this world. So I guess I'm getting a little heavy and philosophical. I hope the topics that we've covered in this class have been interesting for the most part. I hope the work has been useful for the most part. But I really hope most of all that you're coming away from this class with some new bit of capability to see the opportunities ahead of you personally and professionally and in the community, and that you have the ability to act on that opportunity and to see the world become a better place because of what you're able to contribute to it. So anyway, I wish you well, and we'll probably have some more work in finals week, but I just wanted to hopefully wrap up with a few thoughts on that and bring some of this full circle. We'll see you.